Hey, in this episode of the Pretty Focused podcast, I am talking with Christina, a seasoned food blogger who has been in the industry for 14 years. She's going to be sharing her journey from how she started out as a hobby blogger to building a full-time business, and most importantly to you, how hiring food photographers has helped take her blog to the next level. So, if you've ever wondered what it takes to get hired by a food blogger, how to stand out in this growing industry, or what bloggers are really looking for when they hire photographers, then this episode is for you. Christina is going to share insider information on what that food blogger photographer relationship looks like, common mistakes photographers make, and how you can position yourself as an essential partner to any food blogger. So let's jump into the conversation and learn how you can level up your food photography business. Hey, Christina, thanks for joining me today. I am just excited to talk to you about your experience in food blogging and just kind of insight that you have for food photographers and other food bloggers whenever it comes to, hiring food photographers. But I kind of want to start at the very beginning for you and just kind of talk about your experience in food blogging. So how long have you been a blogger and what type of blog do you have? Like what's your niche?
Okay, first of all, thank you for inviting me into this chat today. This is exciting. I always love to talk with other influencers and creatives. So I started my blog in 2010 as a hobby. It was really just a way for me to chronicle the pile of recipes that I had amassed in various piles throughout my house. And my whole idea was I was going to start a blog and report whether they're keepers or not, whether I was going to trash them or keep them.
Okay.
Um, yeah, so it was just totally a hobby. I was working full time. 2 years later, I was able to leave my full time job and
Wow.
focus on my business full time. And I feel like that was really when the trajectory started, when I really got the momentum and started building and growing. So I
Wow.
focus on, over the years too, the blog theme has evolved from that it is a keeper, or not. Now I share tried and true recipes that anyone can make. So I try to focus on easy. Um, when I say simple, I don't want to seem simplistic, but things that a basic home cook that doesn't have a ton of experience could definitely master as long as they can read a recipe.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. There's so many recipes out there with an ingredient list a mile long.
Yeah. And some of mine
And
do, I'm not gonna lie. Some of them do have a long ingredient list, and I usually tell them, "Don't be scared by that, like, the process itself is
oh, good.
easy."
That's good. That's good. Yeah. I mean, sometimes you have to make it happen, but usually
Yeah.
whenever I see them, it's like coupled with like this, okay, now what do I do? When do I add this?
Yeah.
Why don't you why? So that's great that they're easy, tried and true
Yeah.
recipes that people can just depend on. That's great.
Yeah, and if my guys don't like them, they typically don't make the blog. So, I always say, like, everything's been tried and tested by my batch of guinea pigs that I live with that have to eat everything I make.
Yeah, I love that. So wow, 2 years. Did you think that this blog like, did you start it with just, "This is gonna be for fun?" Or were you like,
Yes.
"Maybe it would be fun to make money one day?" Like, what was your goal? Just for
So
fun?
Yeah, so when I started, I was actually watching the movie Julie and Julia. I don't know if you saw that or read the book. The book was
Yeah.
fantastic, but I was watching the movie, while I was, like, de-Christmasing my house and going through that pile of recipes that I was cleaning out, and as I'm watching the movie and going through this pile, I'm like, "Hmm, I think I'm gonna start a blog," and then I Googled, "What is a blog?" I had no idea what one even was. So by the end of that weekend, I built something, just I was online and I had this blog that I didn't know what it was or what to do with. So I'm 100% self-taught. Everything I did, I Googled or taught myself or learned from other people. No training at all whatsoever. I had no idea you could even make money from a website at the time. I mean, this was 2010. Things were very different back then. And as I was going through, like, and learning my way around everything, I started realizing that, oh, people are making money and I can put ads on my site. So I remember the first time I did that, I was making like 4 cents. That was like what I had earned in that month, a month, 4 cents. And I'm like, ooh, I made money. This is cool. And then I started like listening to other bloggers on like Google Hangouts and stuff like that and learning more and more. And then after I made some of those changes that they had recommended, I then made the next month $4. So I went from 4 cents to $4, which is like exponential growth.
Exponential. That's
Yeah,
incredible.
huge. So I'm like, huh, there's something here. I just didn't know what. And I'm like, wouldn't it be cool if I could make my car payment? Like that was my first goal. Like if I could just make my car payment from my website, that would be so awesome. So here I am making my $4 thinking I'm going to make a car payment. But I just kept at it. Like that was like the fire that got lit under me and just kept at it and kept at it and kept at it. And here I am.
Wow. Wow. And so when were you able to make your car payment? Because you were able to quit 2 years
Yeah.
in.
Yeah, so
So
probably about like a year and a half in, like it once I started to figure things out, it went very quickly. It grew very quickly from
wow.
that point. But I'm one of those people, I'm kind of like a pit bull, right? Once I get my teeth sunk into something, I'm not letting go. And I just keep at it and keep at it. And I love a good challenge. And I'm very competitive with myself. So I'm always trying
Great.
to outdo myself and beat myself at different things. It's kind of weird, I'm sure. I
Not
know
at
you're probably
all.
going, this lady's crazy.
No, it's like the perfect personality to be an entrepreneur.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
To compete against yourself and be like, "Okay, this was what I did last month. Okay, but new goal." You know what I
Yep.
mean? So that's great.
Yeah.
Uh, that's so good that you're actually internal. I think, I just that makes me think of my boys. They're 10 and 11, so out in the pool, they race.
Yeah.
They wanna see who can get back and forth,
Mhm.
um, you know, first or,
Right.
and beat their time. So what I've
Mhm.
started doing is actually I'm like, "Okay, I'm not having you race each other, okay? We're not doing that. You're gonna beat yourself, right?
Mhm.
You're just gonna beat yourself." And it just kind of is a different type of motivation. It's a
Yep.
different type of self-motivation whenever you can dig deep in internally and find that self-discipline and that motivation to be able to do it on your own
Yeah.
without having other people push you. Like, it's great to have other people push you, but
Mhm.
whenever you can do it internally, I mean, that's huge that you were
Yeah.
able to do that. So look at what you were able to accomplish, and here we are, like, 14 years later,
Yeah, and
and
things have changed so drastically in 14 years, but I'm not gonna say it wasn't like I made it sound like it was simple and easy, and it wasn't. A lot of hard work went in, and I was honestly very scared when I left my job because I
oh, for
don't
sure.
like, unsure things. I'm very cautious by nature in that sense too, like, to walk away from a guaranteed paycheck, was very scary for me. But I remember thinking to myself, what if I don't have what it takes to be that self-disciplined? So I
Mm,
remember that first week I was home and I'm like, I'm home all by myself. What am I going to do? Like I have this, I can work from home. Like, how do I do this? I mean, it was
yeah.
pre-COVID. Nobody was doing that. So I remember just forcing myself I didn't even have a desk. I was just sitting at my dining room table and I just forced myself to do it all day long like I would if I was at work.
Wow.
And just kind of taught myself. I'm like, oh, I can do this. And then I got less strict. I'm like, oh, I don't have to be, Monday through Friday, 8 to 4. I get some of my best work done late at night. So I would do some work in the morning when my brain was fresh, but then when I get my second brain wind later in the evening, that's when I would pick up again. So like you learn to work with how you function because not
Yeah.
everybody works the same.
Yeah, that's true, and you realize you're you do it for the freedom and flexibility that
Mhm.
it gives you, right? And so
Yeah.
sometimes we just get so wrapped up into it that we forget the freedom and flexibility part, right?
Yeah.
You're like, "Oh, wait a minute." Like, I do that too, and I'm like, "Wait a minute. No, 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 no. I do this so that," and,
Mhm.
I forget to give myself actually the freedom and flexibility.
Yeah. And I remember everybody
Mm.
saying, "Oh, when your kids go to school, you're gonna have so much more time." That is a bunch of malarkey. At least in our school district, it is because it seemed like once my son started kindergarten, it was like, well, you have to be there to put him on the bus. You have to be there when somebody has to be at the end of your driveway when the bus drops them off. They're always getting sick. There's always half days, no school. Like I had to, my husband, because my husband doesn't work a traditional 9 to 5 job. So his schedule, he works all different shifts. And a lot of times he's on call. So we had this like carefully crafted dance that we would do to get my son on the bus, off the bus, stay home with him when he didn't have school. And it was so stressful. It was so stressful. So
Yeah.
being able to stay home made it so much easier to know that I could just get up from my dining room table, go down to the end of my driveway and pick him up when the bus
Yeah.
came.
Wow. And so how old was he when you started, or when, I guess, when you left your job? He was a
So
couple years in because he's 18 now.
yeah, so I think he was in first grade.
Wow.
I think that's what it was. Yeah.
Wow.
So it was a long time ago. And I mean, when I think back, oh gosh, now I feel so much older. Um,
I know. I know. I feel
yeah.
you.
But it's like, it's great that I've had that opportunity to be
Mhm.
there for everything. So that now I was able to chaperone everything, attend every sporting event, function, whatever it was. And I really cherish that because he's my one and only. So I don't get to do it again with another, another child. I
Yeah.
had one
Oh.
shot at this.
Oh, man. Wow. That's
Yeah.
so cool that you figured it out early on, like, whenever he was in
Yeah.
first grade, so then you didn't have to miss. You didn't have to
Yeah.
miss fall.
Sometimes
And
when
you
you
know
look
what?
back on life, you're like, sometimes these opportunities, and I always tell my son that. I'm like, you just have to be confident enough to take the opportunity when it presents itself to you. Because sometimes, like, my job wasn't around when I was in college. Like I said, what you do with your life may not even be invented yet. Like, this
It's true.
wasn't an option when I was in school. And they came knocking and wasn't, well, I was a little afraid, but I saw the opportunity and I took it. And I'm so glad I did.
Man, that's so good because this this industry, food blogging and the online space and the rise of Pinterest, the rise of social media and everything,
Mhm.
like, as much as, like, we hate it, right?
Mhm.
And it drives us crazy, all of the changes and whatnot and the ups and downs of everything, like, look at what it has allowed so
Yeah.
many people to do.
It's totally changed the landscape of everything. Like, I'm dating myself here. When I was in college, like, websites were just starting. I can remember that being one of my senior projects was building this website for a company, and it was terrible when I think back to what it looked like. It was horrific, but
Yeah,
it was just getting started. I mean,
yeah,
email was just starting, and
yeah,
people didn't use that as their primary mode of communication at that time. So much has changed
yeah,
over the years. And I think sometimes you just have to have, like, the lesson I've learned in these, 14 years of being in this industry is you have to be willing to jump on like I said, jump on the opportunity when it's available, but also sit back and watch and see what's going to happen. Because I don't have a lot of time to waste on things that aren't going to pan out, but I also don't want to have the FOMO that I didn't take advantage of something. So it's a delicate balance.
yeah, definitely. It definitely is, and, I mean, you have been doing this really kind of even before bloggers started hiring food photographers.
Oh
Like, I'm
yeah.
not sure. I came around in the beginning of 2016, 2015 era, like, and that's when it was kind of starting to become a thing, and honestly, bloggers didn't want people to know they hired out. Like, that was,
Right.
like, they were very private about it. They did not
Mhm.
want other people to know that they hired photographers to help them or developers, and now it's almost the norm for a lot of
Right.
people to hire. So, what
Yeah.
was that like? What was that transition for you as a blogger to go from doing everything yourself to now hiring somebody to do it for you?
So that was a big transition, and it's one of those ones. It's a little bit like you said it. There was a little bit of taboo to it in the beginning. I often joke 'cause my husband always took the photos for me in the beginning, and I look back at some of those really awful posts, and I have like a photo credit, and I put my husband's name, and I'm like, why would I even do
Oh,
that? But it
you're
was
so
like,
kind.
well, and this is kind of an aside, but I always joke that he's very, this may sound a little crass. He's very good at taking photos of things that didn't move. I said because he's a forensic investigator, so he does a lot of things like that. So I'm like, he's very good at taking things, photos of things that don't move. So he would do, like one camera might have many different types of photos on it. Some were food, some were not. Um, so that was like an inside joke that we had, but I never really, so I call myself a creative, but only to some level. I'm not very good at coming up with like the creative layout. If I see something I like, I can make that happen. But
Mhm.
coming up with it on my own is not my strong suit. And I quickly learned I did not like taking photos. It
Mm.
stressed me out. It frustrated me because I also have perfectionist tendencies and I couldn't get exactly what I wanted when I did it. So I can remember there were many times I'm trying to take photos of my food. I would get so frustrated. My husband would come home from work. I'm like, just do this. Just get the camera at the right angle and do it. And then set it all up and don't touch a thing because next time it's going to all be set up and all I have to do is push the button. Like that was
Yeah.
the way I wanted it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't like that whole creative aspect of it.
Mhm.
But when I first started using photographers, I kind of kept it to myself. Like I didn't want anybody to know that I wasn't the one or my husband wasn't the one taking the pictures, that somebody else was doing it. Because I felt like people would be like, well, are you even making the recipes then? Are you even like trying them and testing them like you say you are? And I
Mm.
struggled with that a little bit. But then after talking with friends and family, I realized they didn't see those as issues like I did. And they were my ideal readers, right? So they didn't
Okay.
care that somebody else was taking the photo.
Yeah. Yeah. Because your identity as a blogger was tried and true
Right.
recipes.
Yeah.
And so once you realized that, then you can like, you started to let it go and
Yep.
it was a little bit easier to do. I mean, I understand relinquishing control
Yeah.
when your reputation is on the line,
Mhm.
right? And
Mhm.
and giving over and handing over something, because for fear of what your readers are gonna think or what or
Mhm.
they're gonna find out, and so I completely understand that
There's a
for
man
sure.
behind the curtain doing the work, then it's not me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So what helped you get past like, just conversations with your friends and family, or what
Yeah,
was that for you?
and I often say, like, there's certain things that are like blogger therapy, like, you have to, like, confront the things that make you feel uncomfortable, and, um, I'm a big person for working smarter, not harder, so,
Mhm.
I'm always looking, it's just in my nature, ever since I was a little kid, I always look at processes and see, is there a better way to do it that's more efficient, that's smarter, and usually that is removing me from the equation in the doing. Like, I'm very good
Mm,
at organizing and orchestrating, but sometimes I am the bottle no, most times I am the bottleneck in the process. So, I had to come to grips with it's okay to give up some control, but not
yeah,
all of it. And when I realized that other people didn't perceive it the same way I did, it was easier for me to let up more and more control.
yeah. I mean, because you still have the final say,
Yeah.
you still have the final say. So you are still deciding whether or not something is gonna represent you or not,
Mhm.
you know?
And I put a lot of work in upfront before I even, um, move to the photograph part of it. Like, I do a big, like, photographer brief that I give to my photographer to tell her exactly what I want, like, what's in my mind, what I'm looking for. She gets a complete brief of information, style guides, everything. So,
Yeah, that's
that's my
great.
control part.
That's great. That's great because a lot of creatives need that like they need that analyze
Mhm.
administrative side to, like
Yeah.
I am very low in like my analyzer side of the brain. And, I have learned it's okay to rely, like I can operate in that area if I need to. Absolutely. I'm a business owner, so I kind of have to operate in everything. But I've also learned it's okay to, in the areas that I know I'm not naturally inclined
Mhm.
to have help in those areas. And it makes the business well-rounded when you can have people working within their strengths. And so
Yes.
that's really what you are identifying here, is that you are working in your strength as the administrative, the organizer, the
Right.
analyzer of knowing, I mean, the ins and outs of the bloggings and all of the data that is involved.
Yeah.
Holy cow, my brain can't wrap around. Like I'm reading these articles on, the SEO roundtable and, all those blogs and stuff. And I'm like, what? Somebody explain it to me like I'm 5,
Yeah.
please.
And then you'll learn it, and then 2 days later, it will all change.
Yeah.
Guaranteed.
Yeah, so I think that's so great that you were able to do that. And I think that, for me, the same thing. It was like, well, what are people going to think less of me because I wasn't the one to do
Mhm.
everything?
Right.
And when you get over that hurdle, you realize you can accomplish so much more
Mhm.
and do so much more. So, have you seen how hiring a like food photographer for you for your blog has helped you? Have you seen like a return on investment? Have you seen an ROI for your time or and even money?
Yes, absolutely 100%. Um, it has been one of the most freeing things that I've done. That and outsourcing accounting were 2 of the most freeing
Yes.
things for me,
Yeah.
because they were the 2 things that I dreaded it the most because I would actually stress out when I had to do recipes. Like, these
Oh,
I hear of bloggers all the time are like, "Okay, today's my photography day, and I'm gonna make 6 things. I'm gonna do all the process shots and all the ingredient shots," and like, just talking about is making my palms sweat right now.
oh
Like,
yeah, for
just
sure.
thinking
Yeah.
about all of that, like, I can't even. And
Mm.
knowing once I gave that portion of control up and I was able to then focus on other things, things really started to move along much more efficiently in my business, and
Good.
that was incredibly helpful.
Mhm.
And I was spending less time doing that 'cause it would take me much longer than it would take a photographer to do it. Somebody who knows where the settings are because I did the Pretty Focus course. I have all my cheat sheets taped to the wall by my photograph table. So I have to get up there and look at the camera, make sure like all the knobs are set to where they're supposed to go because I'm gonna lie, I don't really understand it all.
Yeah.
But I make sure all the knobs and dials and all that stuff are in the right spot. And it's just so many more extra steps for me where you would probably be like, done.
Right, exactly. Right. I'm just like, "Well, what do you mean? You just do this and do that, and it makes perfect sense."
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So it's easy for somebody who feels comfortable doing that. For me, it was like I'd be in a full sweat, I'd be stressed out, I'd be miserable afterwards. My family's eating cold food because now it's like 7 o'clock and dinner time has gone. They're all hangry at me. And yeah, it was very stressful.
Oh, yes, we have eaten many a cold dinner.
Yes. My family likes
Yeah.
cold food.
They have learned to like it.
Yeah,
You
they
will
have
like it
learned.
and you will eat it. This is what we're having. I know
Yeah,
I talked to other photographers and their families are like, "Do you think we could not have, like, warmed up food for dinner?" And so or it's like a very special treat whenever the food is
yeah,
fresh,
yeah,
It's like, "Mom's cooking fresh dinner tonight."
yeah.
So, I think, that always cracks me up whenever I hear that. They get so excited about that.
Well, I remember the
Um
one day I looked and I'm like, "You know what? I don't remember the last time I cooked just for fun and it wasn't for a keyword." Or, like, it had
Yeah,
been so long since I had done that, that I
yeah.
actually, like, I just took one Sunday and, like, I'm just gonna cook whatever the heck I want, and I made, like, I don't know, some fancy French dish just because I could, and I'm like, "I don't have to photograph it, I don't have to think about it, I don't have to do keyword research on it, I don't have to do anything, I just have to make it and eat it. That's it."
That's amazing. That's
Yeah.
so good.
Yeah.
That's good. So what since you've been around since 2010, Tell me about some ups and downs that food bloggers have experienced over the last, like in this industry over the last 14 years.
Oh my goodness, so many. I mean, social media is the fickle friend. It's always the fickle friend. One
Mhm.
minute it's great, the next minute the algorithm changes and nothing works. Or, and like, I remember when the bottom fell out of Pinterest and everybody, like, they lost so much traffic from that because they had put all their eggs in the Pinterest basket. And then there was Facebook. And so one of the things I've learned over time is that you can't stick to just one path. You have to diversify and get your traffic from multiple sources and be working in multiple revenue streams at all times, because the bottom can fall out of anything at any time. I mean, it
Mhm.
just happened with Google, a few months ago, and decimated so many websites in the aftermath. And it was kind of sad to see that actually happen, because some
Mhm.
good bloggers really really felt that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that was like
Hmm.
what it was
Yeah,
I mean, I think we all felt it, you know. I mean,
yeah. Because it's a trickle effect. When we feel it,
mhm.
then we're not hiring to create more content because we don't know what we're doing and how we're going to respond to this, or if we can even bounce back from it. So I can understand where that's like a trickle effect going down, down the chain.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so having traffic diversified
Hmm.
is crucial. Always whenever you can diversify
Yeah.
where you're getting your traffic
Yeah.
is important. I think that showed all of this. That, I mean, for me, I'm looking, okay, like where are my traffic sources coming from? I mean, I'm even
Mhm.
looking at that too. It just because it just showed me I can't just rely on Facebook,
Right.
I can't just rely on Google. I have to, put myself out there
Right.
and get traffic from, multiple sources, not just rely on, one thing. So,
But I think you have to be smart about it too,
yeah,
right? So we can't go out and say, okay, well, I'm going to do all the things. I'm going to be on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok and like all the things,
exhaust.
and
Yeah.
the 14 new ones that will crop up over the next couple of years.
Yeah.
You have to look at them and determine, is there even an ROI for you
Right.
in that channel. I don't put a lot of effort into Instagram because I don't focus so much on sponsored content. And typically that's the return you get from Instagram. You generally don't get traffic. People don't leave Instagram to come to your website. They want to stay in that platform.
Yeah.
Or they're just looking for pretty things. They're not necessarily looking for the recipe. They just like the way the food looks. And I
Yeah.
need them to come over to my website. Same with TikTok. They don't leave that platform. I need them to come over to my website. So I have to carefully, like, before I jump into something, I sit back and really look. I think that's just my analytical brain too. Like, I have to really look at it and see if there is going to be an ROI there for me
Oh,
and it's
no,
worth my time.
absolutely. In the beginning, like whenever I first started my photography business, and I don't know if you heard this too, you may have, but they just say, just focus on one platform.
Yeah.
Just pick one. And I'm like, well, you can't really just pick one anymore, but you're
Right.
right. You have to be strategic in which ones you do pick and like what your ROI, you're trying to get people to the blog because that's where you make the most money. Do you make more money on, if I can ask this question, you don't have
Yeah.
to give any numbers, but um, like getting paid for like reels, like real views, right? Because when you monetize on Instagram versus being monetized on your blog, which one makes more?
So I don't really do reels. I have
Yeah.
all the footage for it, but I just haven't made the jump over to publish them, like, get it all edited and published there. But I do YouTube. So
Okay.
my blog definitely makes more right now than YouTube, but I'm glad I have YouTube because it brings in a different audience than my site does. And then that way too, I know that if something happens, with Google and SEO, even though Google owns YouTube, it's a completely different channel with a completely different strategy. So
Right.
I kind of have both things going. My blog is definitely the main revenue stream for my business, with ad revenue being the top revenue stream. But I
Mhm.
also sell ebooks. I do affiliate marketing. I have a separate business that I run with a partner where we help other influencers work smarter, not harder. I'm trying to diversify myself, and it to the point where it's probably a little insane that I'm doing so many different things, but that's also the way my brain works. So,
Yeah. No, that's great. That's great. I think that people look at Instagram and they see all the followers on Instagram and they get
mhm.
starstruck by the followers. This person must be huge. And it's like, they must be making all sorts of money. And it's like,
Yeah.
well, Instagram has always historically been the lowest driver of traffic
Mhm.
to blogs. And you know what drives me nuts as a consumer and as a reader? I love some of the recipes that I see there, but give me a recipe.
Mhm.
Like, I don't wanna screenshot
Yeah.
your Instagram post and try to follow that, and they don't give measurements.
Mhm.
They don't what you see them put in the video is different than the measurements on the actual recipe, and it's really just more for entertainment.
Right. Yeah, and you have to understand that, I think, going into the platform. Like I love to consume Reels and
Mhm.
TikTok. I mean, that
Yeah,
is like
yeah,
you to go down that hole and you're gone for 2.5 hours. I mean, it goes by so
yep,
fast. And but I find the same frustrations. Like I'm not getting the actual, like I'll see something that looks great, but then I want to make it and I can't find a stinking recipe to make whatever it was that they were
mhm.
doing. So like I can't tell you how many notes in my notepad on my phone have like random measurements and ingredients written down as I'm trying to take notes as somebody's making something on a TikTok
Yeah.
or
Yeah,
whatever.
it's so frustrating. I've even, like, gone to Google and Googled the recipe, and
Mhm.
what does it bring up? The Instagram reel.
Yeah.
I'm like, "No! Give me the recipe.
You're
I
stuck in
want
this
a
like
recipe."
vortex.
That's why I'm like, die-hard food blogs, like,
Yeah.
come on, give me a
Yeah.
recipe. I'm like, I will print it. I'm like a
Yeah.
print and paper. I even know
Me
friends,
too.
I talk to, and they have binders of just blog posts that they have
Mhm.
printed out, and I say, "Okay, that's so great, but as, like, an advocate for food blogs, can you actually go back to that blog, though, and not do that so they get the revenue?"
Yes, like you could bookmark the recipe and
You could
just go
bookmark
back
it
to it.
instead of printing it out, that way you can revisit it.
Yeah.
They would appreciate
Yeah.
that.
Sometimes I find recipes like, so for instance, last night for dinner, I made a recipe that I came across. I think it was on TikTok or something. And it didn't have a recipe. So I kind of like made up my own based on what I
Yeah,
saw.
yeah.
And my family loved it. My husband actually said, he goes, "This is the best thing I think you've ever made." I'm like, well, watch yourself there, buddy.
You're like, "Hey." Yeah.
Watch yourself. Um, but I'm actually contemplating putting my version of it because it's definitely not the same as what they did.
Mhm.
I just did a lot and putting that on my site just so I have a place to always go back to because like I've made it 2 weeks in a row now, so it's fresh in my brain. But if I don't make it for the next couple of weeks, I'm sure that recipe will be gone from my brain.
Yeah. Wow, that's awesome. I love that.
Yeah.
So when we talk about ups and downs, we just talked about Google kinda coming through and just kinda shaking things up. They had was it August? I can't remember what month it is now.
Mm.
It's all this is probably the fastest year
Yep.
ever,
Yep.
for me anyway. We just had another August Google update
Right. Yeah, that was
that was
the
supposed to fix a lot of things.
Yes, so that was the core update that was supposed to fix what had come through in September and October of last year, which was the helpful content update and then the subsequent spam update that they put out, which was trying to eliminate those really spammy sites that we saw that were just trying to like sell us things and weren't provide like had very thin content that wasn't providing any value. Unfortunately, a lot of real bloggers who put time and effort into their content got hit by those. So August came around with this core update and it did fix it for some, but not everybody.
Mhm. Yeah.
It's just You're at the whim. I mean, this
Yeah.
industry, you don't control anything. My business partner Corinne and I always say that the only thing you truly control is your email list.
Yeah. It's true.
Yeah.
It's true. Yeah. So where do you see the food blogging industry going? I mean, because this isn't the first update
Mm-mm. No.
that it's made, that Google has made that has affected bloggers and people recovered.
Yeah. So you hear in a lot of the groups that I'm in, a lot of people have said, well, I'm not even worried about SEO anymore. And I'm not doing keyword research. And I'm not, they're just not putting as big of an effort into those areas. But my way of thinking is, but people are still using the internet the same, right? When I want to make a recipe for lasagna, I go and I Google, how to make lasagna. And generally I'm going to get the AI response, but I know to scroll past those. And I think society is getting smarter and they're learning, to go where they like to go. So I think going forward, the big thing is I think SEO is still important. I mean, I don't think cookie cutter posts are where it's at anymore. We're not all doing the same template and everything. Um, I do think building that know, like, and trust with your audience is huge, and really connecting with them so that they understand that you are a real human behind your content. And I think unfortunately, that comes down to doing video and showing your face and, all the realness that you are, warts and all. We don't all have the perfect kitchen and we don't all have the perfect hair and makeup all the time, but just showing everybody that, hey, look at when I show the pictures of my dirty kitchen sink on video days, people love that.
Yeah.
They love to see how dirty my kitchen is behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Like, not that it's dirty. I mean, cluttered and messy and all the dirty dishes. Not that
Yeah.
I have a dirty kitchen.
Authenticity has always been important to people, but now even more so with
Yeah.
AI.
Yeah.
They
So
want that.
they want to trust somebody,
Mhm.
right? Instead of the big bad internet. They want to connect with you and feel like if they have a question, they can, ask you and get a response from a real human.
So, how do you think, as food bloggers are navigating this, what would your advice for like food bloggers be in navigating this time as well?
Um, I think sometimes you just have to focus on the basics, right? The strategies that work. You have to be aware and hyper vigilant, I think, of everything going on around you and what's coming down the pike that, still
Mhm.
might be, might not be the super topic right now, but there's rumblings that something's going to be happening in an area. Like, you have to keep your finger on that pulse all the time so you're not blindsided by something. Diversification is huge.
Mhm.
Email lists. Like, I have told so many bloggers, anybody who reaches out to me who's just starting, I'm like, if you do nothing else, email list, build your email list,
Yeah.
because you can't trust any other referral source.
Yeah. Um, that's what, we have photographers who use the Buyers Club to build email lists,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like which is great.
Yeah.
They have several, food bloggers on that list already, and it's just like you gotta email them.
Yeah.
They
I mean,
signed up because they wanted to hear from you. Don't feel bad
yeah.
for emailing them,
Yeah. So,
you
like,
know?
anytime I join like a Facebook group or somebody's selling content, the first thing I do is look to see if I can get on an email list, because 9 times out of 10, I'm not going to see your content that you share on Facebook.
Yeah.
Mostly because if I'm on Facebook, it's for my business. It's not to like scroll through. I'm so done with technology by the end of my day that I don't want to sit and scroll and read and look. I mean, I'll entertain myself with reels, but it's overwhelming. And then plus the algorithm only shows you such a small percentage of
Yep.
real content. Everything else is just ads and sponsored stuff.
Okay, so I kind of want to shift gears here
Mhm.
just a little bit as we wrap up our conversation, which has been fantastic, by the way. I just feel like it's been such a good conversation. We've gotten so much just kind of insight into food blogging and, the changes and how we can, adapt And so I just like, what advice do you have for food photographers who are maybe just starting out in this field, or, maybe they're wondering, is this even something that they want to get into? Like, how reliable is this field that we are in? What would you say to them?
So from a blogger's perspective, there's a couple of things I look for when I'm looking for photos. Number one, and this is a mistake I've seen in many of the different Facebook groups where content is for sale. I can't use the content
Mm.
there's beautiful photos. I can't use them for a number of reasons. There may not be a viable keyword I could go after for that item. It's a beautiful recipe. I'm sure, the recipe you developed was delicious and everything. But if I can't, there's no chance for me ranking for it, then I can't use it. So either the search volume is too little or non-existent, or it's just too competitive and I'm never going to rank. So to me, that's a little hard because it breaks my heart when I see those beautiful photos. But then I also look, does it have social potential? So maybe I can't rank as well for it, but it may have good social potential. And I could tell that, Facebook would love this, or this would do great on Pinterest. I also look to see if, and this is one thing I don't see too often, content that fills gaps that I have in my site.
Okay.
So maybe I'm looking for basics, like I just recently updated my enchilada post. So I included a recipe for making tortillas and a recipe for making the enchilada sauce, and different components that go into a recipe that I could then link to again and again and again.
Got it. Yeah, like bundles. Like, we call those
Yeah.
bundles, where it's like
Yeah.
you have a whole list of, you got the cupcake and the frosting, basic
Yeah.
example of that,
Yep.
so
Yep. Yep.
with the tortillas and the
Um,
enchilada sauce, I love that, the ground beef. Yeah,
Yeah,
all of that.
all different kinds of things that they can work together. Um, One of the things I see too, sometimes the photo looks beautiful to me, but it's just too over styled. So I look for the focus to be on the food and not so much on the props and all the extras. Some extras are really nice. Like, you need to have some of them to build,
Yeah.
all that,
Yeah.
like the things that you need to build in there. But sometimes people go crazy with, I don't see it as much from your group. Your group they're so well trained. Um, but sometimes overstyled and it's too pretty. Like, my readers feel like they can't make it then because it's too
Yeah.
perfect.
Isn't that crazy? I know. This is a conversation we have with people. They don't believe us. And
No,
I'm like, "No, this is not something Melody has made up. This is, like,
no.
from food bloggers
Yeah,
themselves. They want it simple, because if it's too intimidating, they won't make it." Like,
yeah,
you gotta understand the psychology of the human brain just a little bit more. Like, I
yep.
know you wanna make it pretty, but you gotta remember with the end goal.
Yeah, and it's
So
almost like you don't
important.
wanna put your name on something that isn't beautiful, and I totally get that. I really,
Yeah.
really do. I always give the example of, I had this no-bake pie on my site. It was like a Butterfinger pie, and the photo that I had from way back when my husband took it when we first started was like, it looked like the dog's breakfast. I mean, it was disgusting. It looked horrible on a plate, this pie. And then I redid it and did a nice pretty one where the pie was on the pie wedge and I was holding it up and I had drizzled with peanut butter and like all the things. And I was talking about this with some of my friends at my house, and they're like, "Oh, I would go with that first image because that looks like something I would make." They wouldn't make the one that's drizzled with,
Oh my
all the
gosh.
extra things, and they
You're
wouldn't do
like,
that. It looks hard.
"Really?"
But the dog's breakfast looks like something that they would make in their kitchen. So, I think you have to balance that.
Yep,
So
for sure.
sometimes when, I see people that when they, and this is where I see it, like when they're clearancing their images, like sometimes I'm looking at it, I'm like, why would this be clearance? But then the analytical part of me starts looking at it and going through this like checklist in my brain. So approachable. I think that that's helpful.
Mhm.
Communication for me, and I said this before, is huge. If I can't communicate with you or you can't maintain communication, that's a big problem for me.
Yeah.
Um, and I always tell my team that you can never ask too many questions. So, like I said, I give photography briefs to my photographer, and I'm very detailed. And in what I'm looking for. But if she doesn't understand stuff, I don't care if she asks me 15 questions about it. I would rather have her ask me all those questions than to get something that completely misses the mark.
Mhm.
So I think maintaining that good communication um, is vital. Or if you're, if you're going to be late on a deliverable, um, communicating that as soon as you know you're going to be late, because I
Yeah.
can plan for things if I know it's coming. So if I know you're going to be a couple days late on something, I can rearrange stuff. But if the deadline comes and goes and I don't hear from you, now I'm starting to like panic because I've got like other steps in this process that people
Yeah.
are waiting on.
Have you had that happen to you before?
Yes, a couple of times.
Yeah.
That's why it's so frustrating for me. And I'm finding too, it seems like post COVID, people are less communicative. So if they don't have
Mm.
something positive to say, they just ghost or don't say anything. And that's extremely frustrating. So I prefer, like, I understand things happen. I'm the queen of, things happening and I'm falling behind or whatever. Like I said, I'm usually the bottleneck in the process. So I understand, but the communication just means everything to me.
Yeah. If you do you like to read?
Love to
Do you
read.
Okay. I have the book right here. Digital Body Language.
Okay. Making a note.
Digital Body Language
Okay.
by Erica Dewan is so good
Okay.
because it is all about that
Yeah.
ghosting and brevity and the anxiety that's caused,
Hmm.
of like, he put a period at the end of his sentence. He must be mad at me. Like my friends, even text messages, if I had a period,
Yeah.
it completely changes the
Yep.
tone of the email. And so even those little things we don't even realize make such a big difference. So you actually
Hmm.
really might enjoy this,
Oh,
especially if
I'm
you're big on
totally ordering that
communication
today.
with your book, like, or with your team. It's very good. I'm like, everybody needs to read this book.
Yeah.
So I'm
I've
going to be going over it with my team as well. So it's important.
I've worked with a lot of college interns. Every semester, I usually have like 5 or 6 working in my business. So over the years, I've probably worked with hundreds of college students, and I've definitely noticed that since COVID. And I've had conversations with professors and college advisors about this. Um, just like have things changed, and they've noticed it on their end too. That
Mhm.
um,
Wow.
post COVID, and it's really like what they're calling like the COVID kids, the ones who came in through like
Yeah.
during COVID. So like this year, I think is the first year that they should start like exiting out of the college,
Okay, good.
the college stream.
Yeah,
So
but then they're heading into the workforce. Oh boy.
I know, but it is that if they don't have something positive to say, if they have to communicate something negative, they don't know how to do it, and then they don't. They avoid it. Um,
Mm.
so I'm definitely getting that book, and it might be required reading for my internships going forward.
Yeah.
It might be
You
their
know
first
what?
project. Read this book.
Yes, that's so great. That you should. You should absolutely. I am 100% like on board with that. You should definitely have required reading for your team. Even like there's some great what makes a good team player.
Yeah,
There's some really great uh I can't the books are on my nightstand.
yeah,
But just it's so important to be able to work together. But I love that though that you talk about your team. I know that we're kind of going off on a little side trail, but I love that you're like my team.
mhm,
These people, the way you talk about them, they're very important to you.
absolutely.
Like they're not just contractors. Like they are people that you are bringing into your business. They're part of your inner circle. You're not just passing off work to them. And I think that's what people want.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. So I'm on the board of a preschool here locally, and that's a very difficult industry with keeping staff. And I always say when we're at the board meetings, I'm like, we just have to remember it's cheaper to keep them. So when you find somebody that you work well with, I try everything in my power to keep working with them. So I like to keep them happy and motivated and make them feel like they're part of the team and the growth and such, rather than just hiring one-off contractors here and there, because it takes so much time to vet somebody, train them, get them into, having them understand your style. Like my primary VA, if she ever left me, I don't know what I'd do. I mean, she is like she's in my head. She is actually in my head. And
What a gift, you
yeah,
know?
where it's like scary, but I appreciate that. So it's like whatever she needs, like you got it, because
Yeah.
it's cheaper to keep them than to constantly be replacing somebody.
Yeah.
So I know when I first started working with photographers, I had a couple of projects and I worked with, I think, 5 different ones right out of the gate, because I'm like, I'm going to find who I like, who I gel with, whose work I like, like all the different things I was looking at, like the timeliness of their work, the quality of their work, how easy were they to work with? Did they communicate well? Like all those different things. And I took the 5, gave them similar projects, and then waited to see kind of what happened. And from there, I think I whittled it down to 2. And I guess this goes back to like my family always owned small businesses, that we always hired 2 people for every one job, because one wasn't, chances are they weren't going to work out. So then you
Yeah.
weren't stuck with nobody. So I always try to have like 2 just in case. And then if that person doesn't work out, the other person has the opportunity to take on more work. So that's kind of always been my approach. Like I bring on a
Mhm.
couple, see what I like, and then go from there. But it's almost like, a little, not a, I don't want to say competition, but they're competing against each other in those areas.
Yeah. Yeah. Communication, culture,
Mhm.
community is so
Mhm.
important. And I love that it sounds like that's what you're creating with your team. More
Yeah,
people
I
need to
try
do
to.
this.
Yeah.
I think more people need to take on that mindset instead of just sending off recipes. You have the potential just to create something really special then with your team.
Mhm.
So, well,
And
it's
I even
awesome. Oh, go ahead.
I even tell my interns, these are just college interns. So I have ones that help me with video editing. And I'm like, okay, so you have my style guide, you know what I do. But I also know that you are exponentially younger than me. You have your finger on the pulse of what's up and coming. If you see something that I should be doing, pitch it to me. I'm not stuck, like I'm not married to anything that I'm doing. I'm definitely open to it. And I've gotten some great, great suggestions from college students that I've incorporated into my workflows. And I love that when somebody has the confidence to say, hey, what if we tried that? Even if I didn't do it, I appreciate that you took the initiative to suggest it.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is great on your part
Yeah. Or like, I
to
know you wanted this
foster that
sort of,
environment for them.
yeah. So like even a photographer, like, I know you wanted this stacked, but what if we tried XYZ? And that's where I say, like, you can never ask too many questions. Like, I know this is what you said, but I really think this would work better. And here's why. And I'd be 9 times out of 10, I'm probably gonna be like, yeah, you're right. You're the expert. I'm not. I'm just hero hacking like you guys teach,
Yeah.
and
But you want to be presented as an analyzer, you want to be presented with facts and
mhm,
like the reasons behind, like, here's
yeah,
why I think this is going to work. And then you get to make that choice as the boss, right?
mhm.
But they present it to you. I love that. That's
Yeah, because I'm
fantastic.
not perfect. I'll be the first one to
Right.
tell you that. Like, I'm
Yeah.
not perfect. I know what I like, but that doesn't mean I've seen everything. So there may be
Yeah.
something that I missed that you are aware of, or hey, there's this new thing we're doing now, XYZ. How about that? So,
Yeah. So then let me end with this last question because
mhm.
I have people asking me this, quite often is, how reliable is this industry for somebody to come in and work for food bloggers? Like, how reliable is this career path for people?
Hmm. I wish I had the crystal ball. Um,
Right?
I wish I did. I'd like to say it's a pretty reliable industry. I think as long as people are making dinner, or any kind of food, they're going to be looking to the internet for resources. um I mean, there's still people that and I'm one of them, that buys cookbooks, like traditional cookbooks. So I think there's niches for everything. But again, I would say don't pigeonhole yourself to one stream. I mean, in the food photography world, I mean, if you're doing work for food bloggers, why couldn't you work for do photos for restaurants? I mean, there's so many bad menu photos out
So
there.
many, it drives me crazy.
Oh my God, so many.
Yeah.
Or, I'm thinking of this one small business in my area. She sells like gift baskets and gourmet treats that she makes. I mean, like those kinds of things. You can photograph that kind of
Yeah.
stuff in your area. So I would think don't just put your eggs in the food blogger basket, but think about other ways that you could diversify that. And the great thing about this industry is it's 100% remote. So you don't have to tie yourself to just your area.
Yeah. You
You
don't.
know?
You're so right. That's the freedom and flexibility that you can actually work from home and do this. And
Yeah.
so, but you know what you said at the very beginning of you just got to take that leap, or you're just going to let the opportunity
Hmm.
pass you by. The reality is nobody knows the future
Right.
ever. Do you know what I mean? If we knew the future, like nobody knows that.
Yeah.
And
So,
so, and I know that there's people who just want to know.
yeah,
I'm like one of those, but just tell me how it's going to turn out. Just tell me how it's going to turn
I'm
out and
there
I'll
too.
be
I'm that
okay.
person.
You know, I just want to know. But actually in a book I'm going through with our grads, they talk about like you can't, you know, you don't know what's going to happen, but you can put things in place to kind of
Hmm.
help, like you talked about, help safeguard
Right.
against things that might happen, you know, because the reality is no matter what field you're going to go into, something might happen. Like that is the reality. People are like, well, what
Yeah.
if it doesn't? Well, what if I fail? And I had conversations on our free training last night and they're like, well, what if, like, I'm afraid of failure. And I'm like, well, the reality is you're probably going to make mistakes.
Hmm.
It's going to
And
happen.
I mean, when you think about it, think about COVID, right? So there were people out there, like photographers doing family photos and stuff, and that like dried up like this. But the
Mhm.
food blogging industry exploded,
Exploded. Yep.
So you just have to be able to think on your feet, I think, and pivot. And there's two sayings here I go back and forth with. And one, it's right here on my computer. Done is better than perfect. So
Yep.
don't get caught up in the perfectionism of things
Yep.
and put yourself out there. And the other one is the Wayne Gretzky quote, right? You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So yeah, if you're going to be afraid and you're not going to take that shot, whatever it is, then you're gonna miss it. Like I tell my son just started this summer his own landscaping company. I mean, he's full-fledged LLC, the whole 9 yards.
Love it.
Nobody would hire him. Kid's an Eagle Scout, everything, couldn't find a local job. So he's like, I'm just gonna start my own business. I'm like, let's do it. But he goes out and he sees somebody with their grass is out of control. He pulls over and talks to them. I would never do that. That like would scare the pants off
Yeah.
me. But he pulls over and he talks to people. And I'm like, Joe, that's great. I'm like, because if you didn't do that, you wouldn't have gotten that job or that job. So you have to put yourself out there. I'm like, what's the worst they could say? No. If
Yeah.
you pitch yourself to somebody or whatever, you're putting yourself out there, the worst they could say is no or not purchase from you. They can't take away your birthday. They can't do anything else worse. It's just no.
Yeah. Yeah. And guess what? Then there's one more person, you know, that
Yeah.
it doesn't mean that's the end.
No, there's other people out
There's
there.
just one, there's just, so there's so much. And I think that you really have to overcome like this limited mindset
Yes.
of there's just only so much work, or like, oh, well, they've already taken the success. They
Yeah.
took it all. There's
It's a super
nothing left for
saturated
me.
market.
Yeah. I am so tired of that
Hmm.
phrase. I can't remember if
Hmm.
we talked about that on our on the podcast interview with you or not, but I'm like, so oversaturated. I'm like, there is so much work out there for everybody, I think. And
Hmm.
so it's not the what, it's the who and the
Yeah.
how.
And photographer A and photographer B may both take very similar, and they have similar styles and take similar photos, but photographer A might appeal to you where photographer B seems to gel better with me. So,
Yeah.
there's a lid for every pot out there. And it's, we're just looking for things. And I'll tell you, we talk. Food bloggers talk.
Oh, I
And
know you do.
if you're looking for somebody, if I'm looking for a photographer, the
Yeah.
first place I'm going to go is my tribes of friends and say, hey, does anybody have anybody they're working with that's looking for more work? That is the first place I go, because I will trust a true review from somebody
Yeah.
who's using them.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
from, building that, and, you might just be getting started in food photography, but if build that relationship great from the beginning, I could be your second client, and then it snowballs from there
Yeah,
as you get
absolutely.
referred around.
I love that advice. Thank you so much. Christina, thank you so much for meeting with me today. I know we're at our hour mark, and so I want to make sure to respect your time, but just thank you so much for all the advice that you have given photographers. I want to make sure that I link your podcast so people can just continue to listen to you, because you and your business partner, Corinne, are just such a delight.
Oh, thank
And
you.
so thank you so much for being with us and joining me today. So you guys, thank you so much. And I will talk to you later.
Thank you, Melody.